The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 134. Where did the offense go Saturday in the second half? We look for answers to that question and more as we recap the loss to Ohio State 26-21 down in the Horseshoe.
Oh man, Euchre's been broadcasting for 27 years. I have never seen anything like this. They need 2 inches. Dennis Franklin, the quarterback, taking a long con from center. He hands off to Shuttlesworth 5, and it's down to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Dennis Franklin! Oh my God, Dennis Franklin fooled everybody. He fooled me. He fooled the entire Ohio State team. Kneeling is Larry Gustafson. Attempting will be Super Toe. Super Toe will kick the 30-yard field goal. It's kicked to send over there. It's a tied-up ball game. 10-10. Okay. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Carter hands up. Carter's down. Look at those Wolverines. 95 Wolverines going in the end zone. Carter's got the pass. In the air, it's done. Buford is going out of his mind. I have never seen anything like this in all my 40 years of covering Michigan football.
This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. What happened to our offense Saturday against the Buckeyes in the second half? That is a question that many of you and myself have been asking since the weekend. I'm not sure we have any answers, but we'll try to get some today from our guest, Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from MLive.com. Kyle is just a couple of minutes away on our Michigan Gameday segment. Now that we have a few weeks between the end of the regular season and bowl preparation, we are going to start talking about some of the other things going on the Michigan athletic scene. We have the number 4 ranked men's basketball team to talk about. The women under first-year coach Barnes Arico off to a great start, 5-1 heading into this week's action. Men's hockey struggling. Women's volleyball in the NCAA tournament starting this week. So a lot to talk about, and we will focus on that coming up on Wolverine Quick Hits right after Michigan Gameday. First, a few of my thoughts on our view from Section 17. As I just mentioned, it was a very frustrating game to watch Saturday. The first half went, I thought, better than we expected, 21-20 at intermission. But in the second half, the offense could not move the ball past the 50-yard line. Why wasn't Denard on the field more often? We don't know. I haven't heard really a good explanation of that, but for whatever reason, I'm going to defer to Coach Borges and Coach Hoke. I think that quite possibly the Denard and Devin package worked very well against Iowa, and Coach Hoke and Borges just knew that it was not going to work the same against Ohio State. I don't know, but for whatever reason, we just did not see Devin and Denard on the field very often in the second half. I thought the defense played extremely well. Yes, we got gashed some in the running game, that powerful Ohio State run game with Carlos Hyde, but I thought the defense did a very good job on Braxton Miller. And given the fact that the offense couldn't get the ball over the 50-yard line in the second half, the defense only gave up 2 field goals in the second half and kept us in the game. Very frustrating game to watch, though, but it was a loss, 26-21. So now we just take a break and then find out Sunday who it is we're playing in the bowl game and get ready for that. But coming up next, let's take one more look back at that frustrating Ohio State loss on Saturday. Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from MLive.com is on deck here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. Back with us on Michigan Game Day this week, Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from MLive.com. Great to have you back, Kyle.
Yeah, it's good to be back, Mike.
Well, Kyle, we've had a few days to mull over Saturday's 26-21 loss to the Buckeyes, and I suppose fans still have plenty of questions as to what happened. The one I've heard asked the most, though, is why didn't we see the Devin and Denard package, or Devin and Denard on the field at the same time against Ohio State as we did against Iowa? And you were at the presser after the game, and from everything I've read so far, I really haven't seen, really a clear answer as to why we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, Brady Hoke says basically that the offense didn't have a lot of rhythm against Ohio State. There were only 21 plays in the second half, due largely to the 3 turnovers in the second half, and there were 4 overall. I think Michigan ran around 61, 62 plays for the game. So he said there weren't a lot of opportunities to expand on the base offense they had prepared for Ohio State, and due to the turnovers, he went to things in the offense, or Alborz went to things in the offense they thought had a better chance of working. He said he didn't want to put those 2 out there if it wasn't going to work. I'm not sure exactly what that meant because it was so successful the previous week, and it's 6 consecutive touchdowns the first 6 drives that those 2 were out there together against Iowa, and we didn't do it against Ohio State, and the offense stalled. It was. I mean, I thought about that during the game. It was so successful. It opened up so many options. It more than anything confused the defense. Even if you run a straight play, it kind of masks a little bit what you're doing because the defense has to account for so much. I thought the bigger issue, that's an issue, but I thought the bigger issue in the game was just the unimaginative play calling in the second half, and that's something that Alborz is going to have to talk about and answer when he's next available to the media, because the game plan I thought really lacked fizz, and you have so many options, and especially in the second half, so many runs up between the tackles, and Ohio State's defensive line manhandled Michigan's offensive line. Michigan's offensive line has struggled so much this year, and then you're facing a defensive line from Ohio State that's one of the best in the league, and got Jonathan Hankins in the middle, big guy that's going to be a top 20, probably NFL draft pick in the spring, and you're running at those guys and just had no success, and you keep going back to him, putting yourself in disadvantageous positions, and then you trot Denard out there under center, and he hasn't attempted a pass in 5 weeks, and I think Ohio State figured that out, and they said as much, and especially in the second half, that when Denard's on the field, he's running the football. And every single quarterback snap he took in that game, every single one of them, he ran the football. And when Devin would come in, Devin Gardner, he would pass. So Ohio State had a really good feel, for what they would face, and I think they were really effective in shutting down that Michigan offense. 60 yards allowed in the second half, largely because of those things, of just being too predictable in the end.
Well, and that's what I thought too. Watching the game, I was just wondering, what are we doing? It just doesn't seem like we have any imagination. I know a lot of fans have been unhappy with Alborz's game plan and his play calling in the Ohio State game, terming it, as you just have said, predictable. Even Ohio State's co-defensive coordinator said that after the game. If Denard isn't or couldn't be used more for some reason, and the interior line blocking was getting no push, and our running backs couldn't create something on their own, which they couldn't all season, I guess when you look at the big picture, anyone with those kind of problems is going to be predictable against a good defensive team, aren't they, in the end?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If you remember when, at the end of Denard Robinson's tenure at quarterback before he got hurt, the offense had stalled in those 2 or 3 games before that, starting from Notre Dame and then in the following weeks. And there's some success in there against Purdue, against Illinois. But those teams really lack, and Michigan went to more of a run-based. They're already a run-based offense, and they went even more run-based to kind of mask what, Denard Robinson's problems in the passing game. And that was effective against lesser teams. But then you saw when Michigan went up against a Michigan State type defense that they struggled to score, and they didn't score a touchdown in that game, and the offense was just too predictable. And when you put good defensive players out there, and they don't have to guess between run or pass, they know what's coming, but they're going to be much more effective in stopping the offense, and that's kind of what happened. Then obviously Denard Robinson got hurt, and then what we saw against teams like Minnesota and Minnesota and Northwestern, is, with Devin Gardner out there, that Michigan had much more success because they were able to pass vertically. Devin Gardner put that threat in there, and then when Denard Robinson returned to the offense against Iowa, at tailback and receiver and a little bit of quarterback, it was the same thing. It wasn't predictable at all. You didn't know what Michigan was going to do: run, pass, who was touching the football. And then what we saw against Ohio State was kind of, I thought, they reverted a little bit back to that predictable offense. And if you give a team that's talented like Ohio State, and you tell them, hey, okay, we're going to put Denard Robinson out here, and he's going to run, it's not going to be too hard for them to stop. They can keep the safeties into the box, which is exactly what they did. And they put 9 guys in the box till the end of the game against Denard. You're not going to have a lot of success. And I think that was really the biggest issue, is that Michigan was just too predictable in that game. And Brady Hoke said he doesn't think that it was predictable, but if you look at Ohio State, as you mentioned, Ohio State's defensive coordinator, I believe Urban Meyer mentioned it at some point. I saw a player quote or two that all said, yeah, we kind of knew what was coming when Denard was out there. That made it easier for us to stop. And I think that was really the biggest issue in that game against Ohio State.
Well, Kyle, in his Monday presser, Brady defended Al Borges, and he said he thought the game plan and the play calling was good, but the execution on the field was poor. Do you think people are maybe overreacting and jumping on Borges like this?
I think that when you're a guy like an Al Borges, where you're calling the plays and there's a clear line between success and failure, the tendency is to overreact one way or the other. And when Michigan kills, when the offense does very well like it did against Northwestern or against Iowa or Minnesota, you're hailed. And when it performs poorly as it did against the Michigan State or an Alabama or against an Ohio State, if you failed. And I think the tendency, especially among fans who are so passionate about their team, is to overreact to one polar or the other. I think in this case, in this game against Ohio State, I do think there is a legitimate gripe about Al Borges' play calling. Brady Hoke said what he had to say this week. He's not going to say, yeah, we did a poor job. Al did a poor job, and we got, he's not going to do that. He's going to back his guy, no matter what his personal feelings are. But I think it's apparent that this offense was predictable against Ohio State. And players, the defensive coordinator, and so forth for Ohio State have all said, we knew what was coming when Denard was out there. He was going to run. And when Devin was out there, he was going to pass. And so I think that's the definition, to me, of predictability. So Brady can say what he has to say, and I understand that. I can sympathize with that. But the facts are there that Ohio State had a really good idea of what was coming at them, and that gives them a huge advantage in stopping what Michigan was trying to do offensively.
If you could boil it down to one play or one call, what do you think was the turning point in the game Saturday?
I think it was the fourth down play at the beginning of the second half, Michigan's first drive of the second half. Remember they had a 21-20 lead at that point. They had gotten a couple of first downs already. They came up to a 4th and 3 on that first drive of the second half. And I've seen, obviously it failed, and I've seen some people say, why did you go for it? I can understand why you go for it. I mean, you have a couple of really electric players playing quarterback, and Denard Robinson, Devin Gardner. To that point, the Michigan offense had performed pretty well. You're playing against a rival, you're playing away, and you see an opportunity in midfield to keep the drive going in the second half, and if you can score, you bring yourself up by either 4 or 2 scores. And so I understand the call, and I think it's a coin flip type decision. You go based on feel. I have no problem with Michigan going for it there. But the problem I thought was the execution of the play. And at first it looked like the play called because Denard Robinson got the call, quarterback, ran between the tackles where Michigan's had little success, and they've been gaining a little push from the offensive line, and it failed miserably. I think he lost 2 yards, I think, on the play. But it turns out that Denard, at least what coaches and players have said, is that Denard was supposed to bounce outside at least 1 or 2 more gaps, and a play that they had success with previous in the game, he just simply cut it upfield too close. So in that regard, I think it was an execution breakdown on Denard's part. But I think that play swung momentum. Ohio State took the football back. They got a field goal out of that failed 4th down to go up by 2, and that's a lead they never relinquished. And I think that really turned momentum in the game, especially playing on the road.
I would pick that as the play that turned the tide, too. Our guest on the show today is Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from MLive.com as we continue our postmortem on the Ohio State game from the past weekend. Kyle, let's talk about the defense for just a couple of minutes. The D had to, overcome turnovers, and they had to go single coverage most of the game so that they could have a spy or an extra person on Braxton Miller. They got gashed up the middle, but even after all of that, they played well enough to keep Michigan in the game, didn't they?
Yeah, that's really been the defense's MO this year. They've played, since Alabama and to an extent Air Force. I think they've played every game as well as you could expect a defense to play. They allowed 23 points against Nebraska. I think that was one of the worst games in that game. Obviously, the offense got very little when Darren Robinson went down. And Nebraska at the time was the Big Ten's top scoring offense. And so I thought that was all right. I think the biggest breakdown was against Northwestern. Kane Coulter, quarterback, did real well. But other than those, I think the defense did well enough to win every game this year. And if you even go back to Notre Dame, playing a team that's going to play for a national championship in a month, and you commit 6 turnovers, and you're playing in South Bend, and your team only loses by 7, and you have a chance to win it toward the end, that was based solely off what the defense was able to do. The offense continually gave up possessions, gave up field position, and yet the defense only allowed 13 points in that game. And I thought it was the same story against Ohio State. You're playing on the road. You're playing an 11-0 team, a team ranked 4th in the country, a team with a really high-powered offense, one of the best scoring offenses in the country, and certainly the best in the Big Ten. And you're facing a quarterback who's a Heisman contender, and you only allow 6 points in the second half, and you only allow 2 field goals, no touchdowns. And that's despite the offense giving up 3 turnovers, plus the turnover on downs to begin the second half. And I think that's really exemplary work from the defense and from Greg Madison. And I think it really speaks to what that defense has been, which is really, it's been the strength of this team, and it's carried them, I think, helped carry them to an 8-4 record and kept them in every game besides the Alabama game. So I wasn't really surprised because based on what they've done previously, and we saw more of it, that the defense is strong and that it can carry this team even when the offense is faltering as it did against Ohio State.
Well, Kyle, the Buckeye blogs and the Columbus media have been in kind of a what-if frenzy since Saturday. What if they weren't on probation? What if they could play Alabama? And so on and so on. I saw a good enough team and maybe a lucky enough team to go 12-0 in the Big Ten. But to me, this is not a team I would consider elite by any measure. How about you?
Yeah, elite's kind of a subjective term. I guess it depends what you think elite is. Is Ohio State a top 5 team in the country? I think so. Based on what they've done. I'm a AP voter, and I have Ohio State number 2 in my poll, and I've taken some heat for that. People saying what would happen if Ohio State played Alabama, and I can understand that argument. I think Alabama would win that game, but I'm very big on results. You go 12-0 in a major conference, and Ohio State's strength of schedule wasn't the greatest, but they didn't play slouches the whole year either, and they did everything that was before them, and that's enough for me. So top 5 team. I saw enough results that this is a top 5 team, Ohio State, and that to me is elite. But they're not. I don't think they would beat Notre Dame. I especially don't think they'd beat Alabama. But that to me kind of adds a little bit to the intrigue of this season. I think this season will live on for a long time for Ohio State fans, just because it got this perfect record that's going to be protected, wrapped in bubble wrap, if you will, and you won't have to. And they won't have to put it on the line playing the likes of an Oregon or a Stanford or whomever in a Rose Bowl. You just left to wonder what would happen if they played those games. And I think that kind of adds a little bit to the intrigue of a 12-0 season where you don't really have to put that on the line against better competition in a bowl game.
Kyle, how bizarre was that? I think at the first intermission when the 2002 team, Ohio State team, was honored for winning the national championship and the anniversary, and they hoisted up Coach Jim Tressel. That just, to me, seemed awfully strange, didn't it?
Yeah, I used the word bizarre, Mike. I just, I was sitting up in the press box, and I saw that, and he got a standing ovation. I mean, there was a large number of people in Ohio Stadium down there that got on their feet and clapped for a man that ultimately is responsible for that 12-0 team not playing for anything, not playing for a Big Ten championship, not playing for a national championship, not playing in a Rose Bowl. nothing. And that man is standing at the 30-yard line or whatever it was, and they're giving him a standing ovation. And I'm like, man, what is this? And then I saw the players hoist him up on their shoulder. I stood up from my chair in the press box, and I just can't understand it. The irony overcame me. Here's this guy is in your stadium that's going to prevent your 12-0 team from doing anything this year, and you're going to give him a standing ovation and hoist him on your shoulders like he's Vince Lombardi. And that just baffled me. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. What that was, I can't. But if you picture, Brady Hoke taking a team and then doing all that he did that Jim Tressel did, and then he had some kind of infraction that prevented Michigan from playing, and he was forced out, and then a new coach comes in and leads Michigan to a 12-0 record, but Michigan can't play for a national championship, and Brady Hoke comes back. I can't imagine Michigan fans reacting the same way. It's just, I don't know, it was just something that really put me at a loss for words, that to honor a coach that way that prevents your team from having future success.
Yeah, it was bizarre is the best word for that. Kyle, I thought it was, a little odd on Monday when the All-Big Ten team was announced, and Michigan had two first-team offensive line selections, Taylor Lewan, Patrick Omame. And, because all season I couldn't figure out if the running issues were mostly because of the interior line blocking, or the fact that we just don't have a true big-time running back. After 12 games, I have to say it's still unclear to me as to, what was going on all year. Was it the O-line, the backs, or do you think it's just still simply a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. I do think ultimately a lot of the burden for the problems in the running game outside of Denard Robinson falls on the offensive line, and that's something that Michigan preached all year. And you never expect Brady Hoke or Al Borges or someone to throw single out a player and throw him under the bus. Like a Fitz Toussaint. And I kept that in mind early in the season, just thinking they're probably trying to keep the blame away from him. But the more I watched that team, I really did see a offensive line that failed to gain consistent push, that failed to open holes. The interior was especially bad, I thought. Michigan didn't have any success this year running between the tackles at all. And I think Denard Robinson was able to kind of break from that just a little bit, just because of his game-changing speed and athleticism he can kind of create on his own. And I don't think that any of Michigan's tailbacks are that talented. Fitz Toussaint had a lot of success last year when he was running behind Taylor Lewan and Dave Molk, two really super elite players, and a line that was much more capable of pushing guys around up front. And this year, I don't think those holes were there. I mean, how many times did he grab the football and a guy or two were on him before he was able to do anything? And so I do think most of the blame falls on the offensive line. And having said that, Fitz Toussaint isn't adult, and none of the backs are adult totally. I think part of a tailback's job is to create on his own. That's just part of what you do as a tailback, is to make something out of nothing once in a while. And Toussaint wasn't able to do that, and neither was Rawls or any of the other guys, for that matter. But so I think in that regard, some of it falls on the tailbacks. But I'm with Brady Hoke. I think that most of the problems Michigan's had this year running football fall on an offensive line that simply wasn't good enough to push guys around up front, to create holes for the backs. And I think that's pretty concerning going into next year, because you lose at least 3 of the 5 guys up front, and probably 4 if Taylor Lewan declares for the NFL, which I think he will in the end. And so you lose 4 guys, and you might have some talent coming in, and they do. There's some really talented guys, but that lack of experience from a unit that was already struggling, I think, is really concerning for Michigan in 2013.
No, absolutely. I think what a lot of us have been saying all year long is Michigan fans have to cool their jets, because next year, not this year, is really the transition year in the Brady Hoke program.
Yeah, I mean, you have rush-based offense, at least right now, and they'll pass more next year. But you lose. I mean, we just talked about all the problems the offensive line has had. The one thing that Michigan always had this year, typically always had, was Denard Robinson's ability to create with his feet. That was the one rushing threat Michigan had all season. Next year, you have the same exact backs, but you in my mind, you take a step back on the offensive line, at least at first, as those guys kind of transition into the offensive line. And I think, personally, that offensive line is probably the most difficult position to play in the field. There's so much that goes into it physically and mentally. And so experience is highly valued up there. It takes a little bit of time to use it. That's why you don't see very many true freshmen play on offensive lines. I don't think Michigan had one since 2006. And now next year, in a typical year, you'd have one or two new guys into the fold in the starting unit, and you'd have a guy like a Taylor Lewan or a Dave Molks and these guys Michigan's had over the past few years to help bring guys up to speed. And I think that's the most difficult thing. Michigan has talented guys coming in 2013 that can enter the lineup, but they're all entering it together with one returner in Michael Schofield. And I think that's maybe the biggest issue, is that Michigan's not going to have a chance to kind of segue into this new unit. It's kind of basically starting anew. I think that's a problem, because you're not going to have these upperclassmen around that can kind of show these guys the ropes and breaking in a lot of new green guys. And so I think that, for me, is the number one concern for this team stepping into next year.
Well, Kyle, just about all of the Michigan beat writers that I talked to before the season, broadcasters, bloggers that follow the team, when we chatted in August, we thought this team, especially given the road schedule, would be fortunate to end up 8-4, and with a few breaks, maybe 9-3 if you were being optimistic. And yes, there were games like Nebraska and Notre Dame we could have won. And yes, there were others like Northwestern and Michigan State we were very fortunate to win. And fans are disappointed, about what could have been. You can say that after most seasons. But after Saturday, this team ended up just about where most observers thought they would, didn't they?
Exactly. Yep. And I picked, I'll humbly state that I picked 8-4, and I actually picked every game as they unfolded. And but if you look at the team, you kind of have what you have. You are what you are. Michigan was an 8-4 team. The four teams they lost to are ranked, according to the AP poll, number 1, number 2, number 4, number 14 in the country at this point, with a combined record of 45-3. So to me, there's no shame in losing to those four teams. Those are four outstanding teams, and you played each one away from home. And I think the biggest problem is that you lost to all four. And those are four great teams, but you lose to all four, and you had opportunities to show that you were elite. But I think in the end, Michigan showed that it wasn't elite. It wasn't able to capitalize on the opportunities before it. It had a chance to knock up what is now the number 1 team in the country, Notre Dame, at Notre Dame, and you didn't do it. You had a chance against Nebraska, you didn't do it. You had a chance against Ohio State with a second-half lead, you didn't do it. I think Alabama was in a different class of its own, but those other three, you had chances to show, okay, we're not just good, we're elite. And each time Michigan lost. And so that, to me, speaks to this was not an elite team. It was a fine team, but nothing more. And it was given opportunities, but just wasn't able to capitalize like elite teams do.
Well, Kyle, it took one loss against Ohio State for some of the, and I guess this is predictable, for some of the Brady bashers to come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Big picture, I think most of us all agree the team is trending in the right direction. Patience is a word people don't like to hear, but it's something we need to have right now, is patience. But do you think the criticism of him is valid, or is it just frustration, especially given the Ohio State game and loss was just a couple of days ago?
Yeah, the vitriol, I guess it shouldn't surprise me, but it has a little bit this week. I've gotten so many emails, and I've seen so many comments out there on stories, and people talking about fire Al Borges, and Brady Hoke's a poser, a pretender, if you will, these things. And I think that's just classic overreaction to a loss against a hated rival. I think that's it more than any. Because when Michigan was unveiling a 2-quarterback offense against Iowa and just eviscerating it with that, and you're off it and you're 8-3, I didn't hear a single complaint. It's all about Evans, the future, and 13-0 next year, and the future's bright. And then you lose like you did against Ohio State, and it's fire the guy who last week you were saying was going to guide a guy to a Heisman Trophy the following year. And that, to me, I think it's just overreaction. I think it'll simmer, given some time. There's no doubt that Michigan didn't meet the expectations it had for itself this year. I don't think it was complete enough to compete for a national championship, but it was good enough in a bad league to compete for a league championship. And it didn't do that. It didn't play for a national championship at least. Play for a league championship at least. And so there's reason to be disappointed. I think the team underperformed just a little bit. But as you mentioned, I think it's turning in the right direction. You had like the 7th ranked recruiting class last year. You got a class that's ranked 5th right now, coming in next year. You've got a quarterback that fits the offense you want to run. You got a lot of pieces coming back. There's reasons to be optimistic, and I think, as you mentioned, the impatience sometimes is what you hear the most. I think those people are just the loudest sometimes, and so maybe it's an outspoken minority that's coming out against Borges and Hope. But I think people need to remember that this team is running an offense that it doesn't want to run. It's kind of conforming to what it inherited, but it's recruiting to what it wants to do and what it knows best. So I think before any evaluations can be made on Hope or Borges or that offensive staff, I think they need to have their pieces in there running what they want to run, and then we can start making some judgments on the long-term direction of the program. But Michigan's doing what it wants to do defensively, and it's doing it with great success. And I, at this point, don't see much reason to believe it can't do that offensively as well once it has more of those pieces in place. And most notably on the offensive line, I think we saw all year the offensive line struggled, and I think the two best positions that Brady Hoke's recruited so far is defensive line and offensive line. So those reinforcements are on the way. You'll see a more capable ground game once you have guys up front that can create holes. Those guys will protect for the quarterback and an aerial game that Michigan wants to introduce. But they've recruited 5 receivers between 2012 and 2013, all of them 6'2" or taller. There's clearly a new direction in the passing game. You got a 5-star quarterback to throw to him. There's a lot of reasons to have hope that the offense will catch up to the defense in time, and I think that's what Brady Hoke and Al Borges need is just time.
One last question, Kyle. Looking back at the Ohio State game early, this was after the game. Brady and Urban not shaking hands after the game. I think up here we've heard the explanation about why that was. And, most Michigan fans, I think, just say, well, okay, we understand that. But you read the Columbus Dispatch and look at some of the Ohio State blogs, they're seeing that completely differently down in Columbus. Do you think this whole thing is overblown?
Brady Hoke says it is. I actually asked Brady. I'm going to ask Brady after the game about that, and he just said, it's not a big deal. We didn't talk before the game, and we didn't talk after the game. We didn't shake hands because of the, just because it didn't work out. And you can say, it might be just an excuse or whatever, but there were fans on the field. The students rushed the field after the game. It's a big game, so ABC cameras were in Urban Meyer's face right after the game. So there were some circumstances that could make it difficult for a handshake to happen. But one thing I do know, and I put this in my story, was that there's been a lot of crazy games out there, a lot of fans rushing the field, a lot of upsets, and coaches still find a way to shake hands. It's a ritual. It's a thing that happens. It always happens, and Brady Hoke's shaken every other coach's hand that I know of in his 2 years here. It's a little bit ironic that after this game it didn't happen. I think that was definitely he probably could have made it happen if he wanted to, but I also understand, too, that there are circumstances that didn't exactly make it easy. So is it being made too big of a deal? Maybe, but is there something more to it? Probably.
Well, our guest on the show today to help us wrap up the Ohio State game has been Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from MLive.com. Kyle, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and we're a couple of weeks away from the bowl game. Actually, this coming weekend, we'll find out who we're paired against. So either before the bowl game or just after, we'll get back together and talk some more Michigan football.
Yeah, sounds great, Mike. Look forward to it.
Coming up next, we'll get the latest on basketball, hockey, and volleyball on Wolverine Quick Hits, here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, the 2012 Big Ten Football Awards were announced Monday evening during a live show on the Big Ten Network, with University of Michigan senior offensive tackle Taylor Lewan being named the recipient of the Remington Pace Offensive Lineman of the Year Award, and U of M junior punter Will Hagerup receiving Edelman Field's Punter of the Year honors. It marked the second consecutive season a Michigan player has been named the Big Ten's top offensive lineman. Last season, fifth-year senior center David Molk won the inaugural Remington Pace Offensive Lineman of the Year award. Lewan headlined the Wolverines' 6 All-Big Ten honorees, earning first-team recognition from both the coaches and media. Fifth-year senior offensive guard Patrick Omameh also was named to the All-Big Ten first team by the coaches and earned honorable mention from the media. Joining Lewan on the media's first team was Hagerup, who also earned honorable mention from the coaches. Junior linebacker Jake Ryan, fifth-year senior safety Jordan Kovacs, and fifth-year senior defensive end Craig Rowe earned all-conference second-team honors. Ryan received his selection from the media, while Kovacs and Rowe collected their honors from the coaches. Ryan earned honorable mention from the coaches, while Kovacs and Rowe earned honorable mention from the media. Lewan has started 34 of the last 35 games at left tackle, including 27 in a row. In 2011, he was a second-team honoree by the coaches and earned honorable mention from the media. Omameh made his 41st consecutive start in U of M's regular season finale versus Ohio State last weekend. The U of M front allowed 15 sacks, which led the conference and ranked tied for 24th nationally for fewest allowed. Hagerup punted 33 times for 1,488 yards this season, averaging a conference-best 45 yards per punt. 13 of Hagerup's 33 punt attempts went for 50-plus yards, and 3 were placed inside the 20. Hagerup recorded a season-best 62-yard punt against Alabama on September 1st. Ryan, Kovacs, and Rowe anchored a U of M defense that was second in the nation in pass defense, 155.2 yards per game, and third in the Big Ten in total defense, 311.2 yards per game. The U of M defense also ranked first in conference-only play in scoring defense, 16.6 points per game. Ryan set career highs for tackles, 84, sacks, 4, tackles for loss, 14.5, forced fumbles, 4, and pass breakups, 3. Kovacs, who became only the 15th player in U of M history to record 300 career tackles, finished the regular season with 65 tackles, 41 solo stops, 5 tackles for losses, and 2 sacks, 2 pass breakups, 1 interception, and 1 forced fumble. Rowe tallied 36 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks during his senior campaign. He made his 50th consecutive start against Ohio State, tying former U of M offensive lineman John Jansen's school record for all-time starts. For the second year in a row, Kovacs was named the Big Ten Sportsmanship Award recipient for the Michigan program. 7 other Wolverines received honorable mention in one or both of the votes. Defensive tackle Will Campbell from the media, cornerback J.T. Floyd from the coaches and media, tight end Devin Funchess, media, wide receiver Jeremy Gallen, coaches, media, kicker Brendan Gibbons, coaches and media, quarterback Denard Robinson, media, and Roy Roundtree, coaches and media. So congratulations to this year's 2012 Big Ten honorees. In basketball news, freshman guard Nick Stauskas was named the Big Ten Freshman of the Week on Monday by the conference office. It is the first conference weekly award of his career. Coming off the bench to help U of M win the NIT season tip-off title, Stauskas averaged 12.5 points and 4.5 rebounds, shooting 50%, 7 for 14 from the floor, and 42.9% from long range, 3 for 7, while going a perfect 8 for 8 from the free throw line. In the Wolverines semifinal game against Pittsburgh, Stauskas tied a career high with 15 points and 5 rebounds and was 6 for 6 from the free throw line as U of M came from behind for a 67-62 win. In the championship game on November 23rd, Stauskas had 10 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 3-point field goals to help U of M defeat Kansas State 71-57. For the season, Stauskas is averaging 11.6 points and 3.4 rebounds per game. He is shooting 59.3% from the field, 16 for 27, 58.8%, 10 for 17 on 3-point field goals, and 94.1% from the free throw line, 16 for 17. We're recording the show on Tuesday evening, so the Wolverines at home in the Big Ten ACC Showdown playing North Carolina State tonight. So congratulations to freshman Nick Stauskas. On the women's side of things, the U of M women's basketball team remained unbeaten at home this season, using a balanced offensive attack and key free throw shooting in a 67-58 win over Boston University on Saturday afternoon at Chrysler Center. Senior forward Rachel Sheffer led the U of M offense with 18 points on 8-4-13 shooting from the field. She was one of 3 Wolverines to score in double figures, joining senior guard Jenny Ryan and senior guard Kate Thompson, who had 15 and 12 points respectively. Ryan added a season-high 8 rebounds, with sophomore guard Nicole Elmblad pulling down a career-high 9 boards to go along with 9 points and 4 assists, while senior forward Nia Jordan recorded 7 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. The Wolverines under coach Barnes Arico are now 5-1 on the season, and Wednesday night in the Big Ten ACC Showdown will hook up with number 4 Duke, which should be a heck of a ball game. In hockey news, number 19 University of Michigan dropped a 5-1 decision to number 13 Cornell in a rematch of last year's NCAA Regional semifinal. Michigan allowed 1 first-period marker, 2 second-period goals, and an early third-period score before getting on the board. After a relatively uneventful first 15 minutes of the game, Cornell struck first when Joel Lowry slipped the puck 5-hole past Michigan netminder Steve Racine. The Big Red opened a 3-0 advantage in the second period, with goals from Timu Tiitinen at 11:42 and Greg Miller at 14:25. Cornell notched another one at 7:49 of the third period when Eric Axel ripped a shot from the slot and beat Racine. Michigan finally found a way to solve Cornell goaltender Andy Isles 9:25 into the third period. Junior defenseman Mac Bennett took a feed from his defensive partner Jacob Trouba and blasted a shot from the point to get Michigan on the board. Sophomore Andrew Sinelli picked up his first assist of the season on the goal. Cornell closed out the scoring with its 5th goal of the game at 17:39 of the third period, when Miller scored his 2nd goal of the game. Racine made 18 saves in all while being saddled with his 4th loss of the season. Isles gave up 1 goal on 27 shots for the win. The Wolverines return to action this Friday and Saturday when they travel to Big Rapids for a 2-game set with the Ferris State Bulldogs. Wolverines now 5-7-1 overall on the season. The University of Michigan volleyball team earned a bid to the 2012 NCAA Division I Women's Volleyball Tournament on Sunday and will face Tennessee in the first round this Thursday in Louisville. The winner of the Michigan-Tennessee match will face the winner of the number 10 Louisville-Belmont contest in the second round, slated for Friday at 7:30 p.m. The winner of that match will move on to the Berkeley Regional December 7th and 8th. Congratulations to University of Michigan women's volleyball and good luck in the NCAA tournament. Don't forget to become a member here at GBMW. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership today. Benefits include email reminders when a story is published or a mailbag question is answered. You also need to become a member for full participation on our always interesting message board. As a member here on GBMW, you can also take part in our popular Monday Night Live chat with E-Rock Wolverine, Coach BT, Maze Man, Doc for Blue, World's Wolverine, and our hockey guru, Jostmeister. The Monday Night Live chat takes place at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Check it out. So join GBMW today and get your daily fix of Maize and Blue news and conversation. Then each Wednesday you can check out the Michigan Man Podcast. The show is now available as an Android app, which can be purchased from the Android App Store at Amazon.com. If you're an Apple person, you'll find our app in the Lipson Toolbox at the iTunes App Store. If you listen to the show on your Apple device, please take a minute to give us a review. It really does help a lot. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your comments. If you'd like to have your Maize and Blue opinion heard, give us a call at 313-263-4842. Then leave an audio with your thoughts on this past football season, the current basketball season, hockey, recruiting, anything that's on your mind. Just give us your name, tell us where you're calling from, and then give us your 2 cents worth. If you'd rather send us an email, our address is the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast yahoo.com. I will have the phone number and the email address in my show notes just in case you don't have a pen or pencil handy right now to write that down. Again, I welcome your thoughts on anything Maize and Blue. Give us a call, drop us an email. Thanks again to our guest today, beat writer Kyle Meinke from MLive.com. We have a few weeks before the Bowl Talk heats up, so in between now and then, we're going to take some time to talk hoops and hockey. As I said last week, even though football season is almost over, we aren't going anywhere. We'll be right here each week with the latest on what's happening this winter on the Wolverine athletic scene, and we will have plenty to talk about, so don't forget to join us. Make sure you tell your friends about the show and download or subscribe to the Michigan Man Podcast. Until next week, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Take care, and as always, go Blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!